Moana of Motunui. Aboard my boat, I will sail across the sea and restore the heart of Te Fiti. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for Disney Royalty, number 13, Moana. Moana. So, it's sort of hard to look at Moana and not think of the movie that came before it, which would be Frozen in terms of the Disney Royalty lineup. And Frozen, which I think I said enough about in my other review, I felt was at best a sort of poorly done attempt to sort of almost deconstruct the Disney princess film, as well as harking back to what people like by the Disney Renaissance, which is, the bit of Broadway, the big and loud, which I said Frozen sort of failed at that, as I called it in my video, snow and fury signifying nothing. Here, Moana sort of lacks that big Broadway feel to it, but in exchange, it has a lot of character, a lot of heart, a lot of theme to it that I felt Frozen was sorely lacking. And it's hard to sort of think about this film and not think about another film, one of its contemporaries actually, which would be Pocahontas. Because, well, Pocahontas was done by the same team, Ron Clements and John Musker, who pretty much did 90% of everything you like at Disney since The Great Mouse Detective up till Moana. Pocahontas came under a lot of criticism for how it portrayed Native American culture, where it looked good, but it wasn't quite accurate, as well as the treatment of Pocahontas. That wasn't quite accurate. Also, think about what Pocahontas' story is. She has a dream about a spinning arrow. What does that really have to do with anything, other than she has visions of the future? That's kind of it. When they did Moana, they did what Disney used to do, which was for stuff like Saldo Domingos and Three Caballeros, they actually went to South America and other countries to understand the culture they were going for Saldo Domingos and, of course, the Three Caballeros. So what they did was they went to the South Pacific for a 2-week research trip, and they met with chiefs, navigators, experts, and natives to garner understanding of the culture, which involved animation and music teams. And to ensure more cultural accuracy, the studio created what was dubbed the Oceanic Story Trust, which consists of anthropologists, cultural practitioners, historians, linguists, and choreographers from islands including Samoa, Tahiti, and Fiji, as well as a few others. And that was pretty much making sure this movie was, bare minimum, respectful to the culture it was trying to emulate. And according to the story, they learned that voyages across the South Pacific actually ceased for 1,000 years. About 2,000 years had passed, they started once more, but no one quite knows what caused that lull, and that led to this movie. Like, well, let's come up with a reason why. Great idea, love it. Granted, adapting something like The Ice Queen, I think, would also be more in line with them, but well, that's what Frozen was there for. The respective theme is what really helps serve this movie, and the theme of this movie is self-identification, understanding who you are, and not letting outside things define you. We see this emulated throughout most of the film. The people of Motunui, they have hidden from their voyagers' roots due to what happened with the Heart of Te Fiti and the curse. We see Moana's father, Chief Tui, who also has avoided who he is because of what happened with his friend, with Tamatoa putting more emphasis on the glitter and glam, because he believes that who you are on the inside doesn't matter. Like, what people see on the outside, that's what matters. That's where your real value is. Maui, on the other hand, like a lot of characters, have let their past define them. In Maui's case, he was abandoned as a baby. He didn't quite know why. The gods made him a demigod. He's devoted his entire life to trying to be worthy, to get the love that he didn't get from his parents. That's why he gets fire. That's why he pulls the sun. That's why he gives coconuts. That's why he taught the humans how to sail. He wants them to love him, and he crafts an image because of that. The idea of Maui is something that he himself wrestles with quite a bit, because if he can't, even if they have his hook, if he can't use the hook, he's not Maui. This is pretty similar to Thor in recent comic books, where the question is Thor still Thor without his hammer? And that comic pretty much spent a good period of time saying, well, no, whoever has the hammer's Thor, where the comic goes a really, really complicated and unnecessary direction. But over the course of the movie, Maui realized that the hook doesn't define who he is. He can be a hero without it, which is why he's so able to sacrifice it. All of these characters, from Chief Tui to Te Fiti to the weird pirates, Maui, Grandma, all of these characters play off of Moana, which help her decide ultimately what she wants. This is really good. This is good storytelling, and this also harkens back to some really strong Disney films before, not just Clemens and Musker's work, which I think this movie uh, draws heavily from films like Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, Hercules, a little of Brave, loosely on Brave, but also Mulan, who I've also talked about. This Mulan sort of being this new direction for the Disney royalty line. But at the same time, there's a nice bit of fun and humor to it. Mythology-wise, this is very much like Hercules. Like, take Hades out, because this movie is really lacking an actual villain like Hades. This is pretty much just a myth. You know, there's a girl who goes to find this larger-than-life figure, and the larger-than-life figure must deliver this, and using her wits, a little ingenuity, sometimes just forcing her way through, Moana is able to achieve the great result. And that's very much a myth. It's very much how most mythology works. Coming up to Moana herself as a character, what I liked about her is that she does feel very much like she's trying to continue a legacy set up early on in the Disney Renaissance with characters like Ariel, Jasmine, Pocahontas, Kida, again a little bit of Hercules, but also even still Mulan and even Merida to an extent. So let's unpack this a bit. Okay, so with Ariel, Jasmine, Merida, Kida, and well, actually, just those. Let's go with those four. They all have a very set thing. They're in a family. They're particularly a royal family. Moana technically is royalty. The position of chief is apparently hereditary. So there's a lot of responsibility. A good portion of a lot of earlier Disney films don't really deal with the concept of responsibility, at least from a princess standpoint. Even Frozen doesn't really deal with that at all. It's just like, I'm in charge, let's do it. Ariel being 16th in line for the throne, at least 16. I'm never quite sure the number. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter what's expected of her, which is why she feels so comfortable going off and doing whatever. Jasmine, in the animated and the live action one, seems to be aware of the power she could have, as well as the decisions that she could make. The animated film doesn't do anything with that, other than her mentioning that when she becomes queen, she has the power to get rid of Jafar. And later films, we see her holding meetings with other royal members. Live action one, so it's like, hey, she'd like to be sultan. She thinks she could be sultan, but Dad, for whatever reason, doesn't quite want that to happen. He's not really contemplating it. Then we come to Pocahontas. Pocahontas is the daughter of a chief. She actually is a bit more similar to Moana in that aspect. But the problem is, Pocahontas is sort of like removed from the idea of chief. The closest we get to her in the idea of being chief is that, hey, she has to marry Kuku, Jiff Man, I like to call him. And that doesn't mean anything. Later on, she'll become chief, but that doesn't really play any real role in the story. Kida, from Atlantis' Lost Empire, she also is the daughter of a chief, but it's sort of already established that she'll be fine to lead. There's just no reason to lead, because, Dad's not going anywhere for the most part. But she also sees the problems that plague Atlantis, primarily the fact that, we're not doing anything, we're stagnant. A culture that doesn't move with the times, doesn't try to improve itself, will ultimately fall. It's just usually how that works. Then we come into Merida. Merida gets really close to Moana in terms of how that story should be done. But the problem is Merida's story is more about her learning to embrace the role of leadership, or doing what's expected of her. And also learning that, she can change her fate, whatnot. I don't really think that quite works in that movie. But then we come to Moana. Moana is someone she's the daughter of the chief. She's being groomed to be the next chief. That's really great. And a lot of this movie is about her understanding exactly not just that she will be chief, but what kind of chief she wants to be. Does she want to just maintain the status quo, or does she want to try to get Motunui back to its roots? And even more so, how can she rationalize what is expected of her versus what she feels she needs to do? Now, Pocahontas does this sort of well, but I think the real frustration with Moana comes from trying to please everyone. And that's something that echoes a bit with Mulan. Because Mulan's big idea was that, hey, if she tried to do what she wanted to do, or at the very least, it would bring shame to her family. And it's even more serious for Moana. She has a lot riding on it. She's the next chief. Her people will come to depend on her the same way they depend on her dad. And the movie does a great job of sort of communicating to us that there is a slight problem with the chief's approach. Not that it's wrong. Maintaining a status quo, keeping everything going is fine. But as I said, who needs a new song? The old songs are fine. Happiness is wherever you are. where Moana learns that you can be happy where you are, but you should always try to go for more if you can. And then, of course, there's her relationship with her grandmother. So, like, you have to be true to who you are. What you like, that's where you are. All right. A good portion of this movie is about Moana trying to find the balance between that. She thinks there's something wrong with her. Like, I see that I should do this. This makes sense. But something else on the outside of it all says I should go there. And she doesn't quite know why. And we know why. She was chosen by the ocean. Actually, the ocean scene when she saves that animal is important because it shows, I think, why the ocean chose it. Because as a chief, she's looking out for everyone. And she's willing to go off to a dangerous area. She doesn't even think that it's dangerous. All that matters is, this person needs help, I have to do something. So the ocean chooses her. I like to think the ocean is actually Chief Tui's friend that died, who's like, hey, she can do it because her dad would have done it. There we go. An important scene that I don't think people really think about in the movie is when she first goes sailing for the first time. It all goes horribly wrong and she almost dies. In a lesser film, this would have been handled totally well. She's just able to do it because, it turns out that's actually where her ancestry comes from. It's in her blood. It's not how sailing works. It's not how the Force works. You have to know how to do it. She may have a natural affinity for the water, but the finer nuances of sailing, of wayfinding, has to be learned. And that's where she comes to Maui. And this movie does play around with the idea of the journey. Moana is told she has to restore the heart of Te Fiti, but she has to go find Maui first. Maui has to be the one to do it. But over the course of the story, she realizes he's pretty messed up. He's got some issues to work with here. She has to effectively revitalize the hero that she's known him to be. The one who gave humans so much. This isn't him. And she has to take sort of a stern and a soft approach to sort of getting him out of his shell. Where I think she thinks she's going to look to Maui for inspiration. Maui is actually inspired by her to be better, to be true to himself. That's what Mini Maui keeps pretty much saying the whole time. Mini Maui pretty much being what Maui really thinks, or rather his conscience. And for the most part, this is Moana in a nutshell. Someone trying to figure out who she is, to sort of figure out what kind of leader, what kind of person she wants to be. And she takes a very gentle approach to it. There's also a really great moment when we come with Te Fiti for the first time, or, who we'll later find out is Te Fiti. And when Moana wants to keep going, and Maui realizing that the risk is too great to him, he can't risk losing his hook, so he goes off. And Moana herself kind of thinks, well, this is it. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe I can't do this. And then comes the mentor figure, Grandma. Love that old woman. Love her. Because what's important here is something else that was critiqued about when it came to Grandmother Willow. Grandmother Willow just sort of says, go and do it. That's it. You got to keep going. With Moana, it is ultimately her choice. Because, hey, she's getting ready. Like, Grandma says, like, look, if you want to go, we'll go. That's all there is to it. When Moana is about ready to leave, she can't do it. Because ultimately she doesn't want to quit. It's hard. She feels that she could give up, but she doesn't want to. It's not over for her. And this is the moment when Moana realizes who she is. Who is Moana? She's the daughter of a chief. She is descended from voyagers. She loves the water. She loves her people. All of these things by themselves do not make Moana. Moana is all of these things. She's every heartache, every scared moment, every happy moment, every moment of inspiration, every moment she's taught kids how to dance, every time she's handed off coconuts, every time she's tried to sail off into the water. That is who Moana is. And with that information, she's able to go ahead, and then she comes to who we'll know to be Te Fiti. And that's sort of the message right there, like, you are not the worst thing that happened to you. This is not who you are. Using her words, using her head, she's able to save the day. And this isn't that outrageous an idea. Again, going back, it is very much a Mulan and a Pocahontas sort of story. The idea that the obvious solution requires a bit of empathy, a bit of forward thinking. That we can't just punch our way through, which seems to be what Maui and everyone thought was going to happen. We'd have to fight the lava demon. Turns out the lava demon's Te Fiti. Just give it back to her and we're good. And with this information, Moana is able to go forward in life. armed with the knowledge of not just knowing that she's descended from voyagers, but now she knows how to be a proper voyager. So that is Moana, I think. As a character, I really do like her. There's a certain amount of optimism to her, a certain amount of measured response. She's a very mature person. There's a strong sense of community and duty that I think we really only seen in Mulan. But even more so, this is a story about a young person stepping into the world, which Disney's always liked to do, but I don't think they've ever done it this way before, which is interesting because we're using Clemens and Musker for this. The Great Mouse Detective, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Hercules, Atlantis Lost Empire, Treasure Planet. Anything, this could have been like Treasure Planet. A down on his luck kid, doesn't really believe in themselves, and it has to get this sort of mentor role to sort of be a better person. And Moana sort of does that, at the same time doesn't. It's very much her own thing. And that's something Clemens and Musk are really good at. Despite all the movies, you can see certain elements, but they always feel like unique and separate properties on themselves. And we see someone who has to balance out what is expected of them versus who they are. And instead of, pulling apart at the seams, she's found out that the two parts are just, totally one and the same. She is the chief. And she used this knowledge to guide her people to a newer, better, stronger future. Well, enough of that. Let's talk about parallels. So, since we weren't doing Maui as a Disney prince, I didn't think it was... I didn't feel it was there. He was very much a genie character, even more like Phil from Hercules. The more I thought, or even Mushu. The parallel to Moana, well, let's see. Let's just sort of deconstruct her, but let's sort of pull her apart a bit. Let's go with the most dull part. She's a person of color. Doesn't really matter to me, but it is there, and she was hyped up for that. She has a strong love of community, family, interesting approach to water, believes in heroes. It's Katara. It's Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, granted, take away the temper, because Katara's temper is legendary. She and Moana are very strong and I think very good female characters and role models. It's interesting that today we've sort of looked to that they have to be superheroes. But there's really nothing outwardly spectacular about Katara and Moana. There's no really attempt to sort of shy away from their femininity. There's no attempt to make them trailblazers. They appear very natural within their universe, minus the whole Katara going to the North Pole thing and finding out, the women are healers. But for the most part, the in-universe doesn't really care that Katara fights. And no one in the universe sort of underestimates Moana. They know she's capable. Like, the only people that underestimate Moana are people that are just naturally better than her and could eat her. And that's sort of it. Well, with that in mind, this brings the video to close here. If you're new to this channel, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. Smash that like button if you like Moana. What are your favorite moments from it? What do you think about Moana as a character, as a movie? Let me know in the comment section. I will catch you all later. This is Debunk and Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching, and as always, may your fandom serve you well.